The White House is denying this report out of the Washington Post that claims President Trump is planning to remove H R McMaster as his national security advisor. Now, the paper says that the president is already discussing potential replacements, but his press secretary says that's not true. Well, let's get to the bottom of this. Jodi Schneider has the latest and all the details on this developing story since mid-morning. So what has been said and what do we know?
Yeah, it all seems sort of fluid today, right? So the Washington Post reported that McMaster, that now Trump was comfortable with having Mr. McMaster leave, whether it be a firing or a forced resignation. It's a little unclear. But then we just heard from the White House press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, saying that is not the case, that she had spoken to both the president and Mr. McMaster, and that he is staying right now, and that they have a, quote, good working relationship. So clearly there have been tensions between Mr. McMaster and the president, just as there were tensions with Mr. Tillerson, and he had long been reported for a while to be on the outs with the president before he was fired in that tweet this past week. So there are clearly tensions between Mr. McMaster and the president, but right now we have the White House press secretary saying everything's okay, he's not leaving.
Yeah. But these things are fairly fluid. I mean, not to say that what they're saying is wrong, but these things could change. Not to add to the speculation, but have any names been floated as potential replacements? And I guess more broadly, what does that mean then for, I guess, this also fairly fluid foreign policy?
Yeah, right now, of course, we've seen Mr. Tillerson leave. We've seen some of the other folks at the State Department leave. We're in the midst of an interesting period, right, with foreign policy, with these talks that the president himself decided to have with North Korea, supposed to take place. We have all kinds of negotiations going on right now. We have South Korean officials over in the U.S. talking about trade, and the president made some comments about perhaps military aid being curtailed to them. We have the NAFTA negotiations going on. There's a lot of things happening on the world stage, and we have a fair amount of turmoil in the personnel. So perhaps that's a reason that they want to have McMaster on at least for some time. Mr. McMaster and the president have had differences, particularly on the Iran nuclear agreement. That's one area where they have really differed.
How concerned should the world be given the revolving door?
Well, it certainly is a revolving door, isn't it? I mean, we haven't seen it only in foreign policy. We've seen now with economic policy that Gary Cohn, who fought with the president publicly over the tariffs, is now gone, and he's replaced by Larry Kudlow, who had been against tariffs, but now this seems to be a good foot soldier for the president on that. But there is a lot of turmoil, and there may be more coming up. We had heard earlier this week that people, including the Veterans Affairs Secretary, who has a cabinet position, may be on the way out. So it is concerning, and people on Capitol Hill are concerned, both Republicans and Democrats. Apparently, there's also a lot of positions in places like the State Department that have not been filled. So there's concern. It's a midterm election year, and so Republicans in particular are hoping some of this gets smoothed out. They don't want to be punished for this at the polls.
So, Jodi, having said that, given that there could be more changes ahead, what would it mean for Trump's policies going forward?
Yes, of course, it complicates things to enact a foreign policy and to carry it out on the world stage when you don't have, you're between secretaries of state, for instance. His pick for Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, the CIA director, needs to be confirmed by the Senate. That will probably happen, but, it'll take a bit of time. The CIA pick, who they would just name this week, she may have more trouble in the Senate. So it's going to complicate things. And as we've said, it's an interesting time, particularly with those North Korea talks. They haven't yet been scheduled, but the president says he wants to go ahead and do them soon.